In 2013, Theranos buried a validation report showing their blood tests failed on critical disease markers, and 76,000 patients received results they couldn't trust. Yet the company's CEO was on the cover of Fortune magazine 3 months later. They knew, and they buried it. So why has no one ever told you what was actually in that report? Elizabeth Holmes was the story Silicon Valley wanted to believe. A Stanford dropout who built a company promising to democratize medicine. One finger prick, a drop of blood, hundreds of tests in hours for almost nothing, the technology that would make healthcare accessible to everyone. Forbes put her net worth at $4.5 billion. Time named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Walgreens trusted her. Safeway trusted her. The Department of Defense trusted her. She was, by every public account, the next Steve Jobs. In October 2013, an internal Theranos scientist ran validation tests on the Edison device, their proprietary machine that was supposed to change medicine. The results were alarming. The device couldn't reliably detect HIV antibodies. It failed on PSA markers used to screen for prostate cancer. The cardiac enzyme readings, the numbers a doctor uses to determine if you're having a heart attack, were dangerously inconsistent. Report landed on the desk of Adam Rosendorf, Theranos' lab director. He escalated it internally. He pushed. He documented his concerns in writing. Within months, he resigned. The report was never shown to regulators. It was never shared with Walgreens, whose stores were already routing customers to Theranos wellness centers. Holmes didn't pause the expansion. She didn't pull the tests. In January 2014, Theranos extended its Walgreens partnership across Arizona. New locations, new patients, the same broken machine. When employees raised concerns, Theranos didn't listen. It lawyered up. Tyler Schultz was 22 years old, a Stanford grad who went to work there because he believed in the mission. When he flagged statistical irregularities to Holmes directly, she disputed them. When he tried to contact regulators, a senior employee confronted him in a parking garage and warned him about the consequences. Theranos then sent private investigators to track his movements and threatened to sue him personally. His grandfather was George Schultz, former Secretary of State, a man sitting on Theranos' own board of directors. George Schultz sided with Holmes over his own grandson. Hold on to that, because that's not even the part they really didn't want out. The board of Theranos read like a geopolitical trophy case. Henry Kissinger, 2 former secretaries of defense, a retired Navy admiral. Not a single oncologist, not one laboratory scientist, not a person on Earth qualified to evaluate whether the technology actually worked. That was intentional. Holmes built the board to be a legitimacy shield, not an oversight body. These were names that signaled national security credibility and political permanence. Names that made venture capitalists stop asking technical questions. Names that made journalists write about vision instead of validation. And it worked. Theranos raised over $700 million without ever publishing a peer-reviewed study, without ever submitting the Edison device for independent analysis. Holmes cited trade secrets to block scrutiny at every turn. The company ran the vast majority of its tests on conventional Siemens machines, the same equipment used in any hospital lab, while billing clients on the proprietary technology it claimed to have built. In Arizona alone, over 76,000 patients received test results that the company's own internal scientists knew could not be trusted. Some of those tests screened for cancer. Some measured HIV viral load. Some told people whether their medication was working. Some of those people made medical decisions based on numbers Theranos already knew were wrong. They said nothing. For 2 years. Nothing. In 2015, John Carreyrou at the Wall Street Journal published the first public investigation. Theranos responded by threatening litigation. When the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services finally inspected the lab, they found deficiencies so severe they moved to revoke its certification and ban Holmes from operating a lab for 2 years. She was convicted of fraud in January 2022. The sentence, 11 years. She reported to prison in May 2023, nearly a decade after that internal validation report was buried. The investors who lost $700 million, most were wealthy enough that it barely registered. The board members who lent their names to a company they never examined, never charged, never fined. George Schultz died in 2021. He never publicly acknowledged what his grandson tried to tell him. Holmes is in a federal prison in Bryan, Texas. The Edison device never worked. The patients who received wrong results were quietly notified years after the fact and told to get retested. But here's what no one answers. The FDA still does not require laboratory-developed tests to go through pre-market approval. The regulatory gap that Holmes exploited, the one that allowed her to skip independent validation for a decade, is still open. The boardroom model she used, stacking directors chosen for their names rather than their expertise, is still the standard. The investor incentive that rewarded the story over the science is still intact. The system that made the Theranos possible didn't change. So the next question isn't whether Elizabeth Holmes was a fraud. The question is, how many companies are building the same thing right now and whose name is protecting them?